Welcome to Critical Conversations with the Campus Foundation. I'm Chris Hussain.
I am Shanta Sipasa.
I'm Narmada Ramjit Singh.
And today we have a very packed episode for you today. Later in the program, we'll be joined and we'll be doing an interview with Mr. Carlos John, former minister and former MP for St. Joseph, as we continue to reflect on the legacy of the late, great, very honorable former Prime Minister, Mr. Basdeo Panday. But before we get to that, of course, we're going to get into some hot topics because we have a lot to get through in today's show. You ready? You ready? Yeah? Okay. So this week, we saw two major events, I think, happen in the country. You know, the country, the people of this country, we've been calling for collaboration between the opposition and the government as it pertains to crime. I want to congratulate the opposition on putting forward a very necessary crime talks panel. Of course, this panel would have included the opposition leader and, of course, Mr. Gary Griffith. He is the NTA political leader, former commissioner of police. I think also Dr. Indira Rampasad was also a part of this panel. Did you get a chance to look at the panel? What you thought? What were some of your thoughts?
What stood out to me, because I saw the opposition leader called for the SOE, but we had Mr. Griffith disagreeing and, stating that a SOE.
What are your thoughts on the reimposition of a state of emergency? And how do you think it really impacted in helping the crime situation in the country?
Well, an SOE would obviously help crime, right? It will help your statistics. But of course, the vibrancy of the economy will suffer. And I know that, I believe it was during the pandemic, that this same government, they wished to extend the SOE, and I believe the opposition would have been against that. So on paper it works, on paper it looks good, but the reality is, and if we look back at the SOE that would have been implemented to curb crime, not the pandemic crime, in maybe the past decade, there were a number of cases. I think even the DPP had to,
But when you look at, I was reading the newspaper this week and I saw a police officer was shot dead during a robbery. Imagine a police officer, and we really have to evaluate where we are as a country, where these guns are coming from. And I remember under the PP government, I can't remember the exact term, what it was called, and I think it was during the SOE, but there was a gun, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but a gun amnesty, where if you have guns, just bring them in.
Now, coming onto the panel, you said something there. You said that the SOE, Mrs. Bisassa, she would have been, of course, for it, and of course, Gary Griffith was against it. Very interesting, I didn't expect that politically in the news, and I want to see how that pans out, because, of course, we would have seen in the local government election, Mr. Griffith and Mrs. Bisassa coming together. They're saying, here's what we're going to...
I guess they didn't collaborate on that meeting.
No, but is this the first time we see them disagreeing in the public light?
No.
So, can we take this seriously? I don't know, but I think well-intended politics. I always commend good intent. I
think it was well-intended, good intent. I commend them for having the meeting, but oh gosh, at least pick up the phone, call one another, and be on the same.
But here's the thing, that's genuine, though. At least we also know that it wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't a PR stunt, because if in fact it was, it would have been planned better. To the communication, the line of communication. So is it that in our country, that's the vibrancy of our democracy, that we can exist with different opinions, and that is okay as well?
I really like that it was a town hall style meeting.
I agree.
Where people shared their contributions. I believe there was a couple that shared a very heartfelt, very touching story about their daughter that they never got any closure on. And it's a sad reality that exists, and bringing it to the forefront again, reminding the authorities that these cases are cold cases and they need to be solved. People need closure. It's only right.
I saw something going viral, right? And now I looked at it live, right? But of course,
Tell us, Chris.
no, there was something that went viral. Dr. Rampasad, and she spoke about the Gen Z culture and the millennial culture, right? She said that they have everything because the generation before worked very hard. And basically, I think she's trying to say that they're lazy, always in the phone. They don't know what they're doing in the phone. And she wants parents to take control.
Chris, you are a Gen Z.
We are Asian. We are part of Gen Z. I think you are
not.
I think you are part of millennials, though,
Yeah.
right?
So, Chris, what you doing in that phone?
Listen to me. Let's be honest. We existed in a time where technology is a thing, right? Before the phone, there would have been the newspapers. What they used to be doing in the newspapers?
No, it was the internet.
Well, no, but I think we're still in that era with the internet and phone and technology, you know.
No, I think the millennials would have experienced the transition to the internet or dial-up, and you wouldn't have known. You know what the dial-up sounds like?
No.
All right, so okay.
No, but the thing is, so many things happen on your phone. You take emails, you take calls, you have Zoom meetings. We existed in the pandemic where school became online, and as a lecturer, she would know that. And then not just that, you know, right now at universities, we have embraced the hybrid system. I want to commend all tertiary institutions. I know that you're doing your masters, and you have a hybrid system right now. You're existing in that system
Correct.
at UE. So I think to put that, you're using a public platform. There are hundreds of thousands of persons looking at you, hundreds of persons looking at you on the live, and I found that to be a bit. I don't know where that came out from.
But would you agree that Gen Z, we are lazy?
No, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. And if it is that we're going to blame,
That's a very large blanket statement,
Correct.
and it's one that should never be made.
not made, but
Both you
no.
and Chance are two of the most hardworking individuals, young individuals that I know.
But thank you, but I can't take credit for this because almost all of the persons that I know in Gen Z
Yeah.
are hardworking. I think what it is though is that our generation understands very much the value that we bring to an organization, and if it is that we are not being compensated right, we just will not participate, and we are okay with that. I think that's a major difference, right? And I don't think it is laziness. I think it's knowing exactly who you are matters,
Your value.
and where do you want to see yourself. And I think that is something that maybe some people in society, they like to dismiss. And it's quite unfortunate that publicly you would say something like that, and she lectures to young people and parents take control. I mean, I found it to be a bit out of timing. That is really how it came across to me. It came across quite out of timing. And she also sounded as though she was very upset, she was angered. Very, it's impassioned almost. A little too impassioned for me. Too impassioned. And what's interesting is that you want buy-in from the youth population, especially in an election period, and you don't speak to people like that. How would you feel? You're a millennial. How did you take that?
Again, blanket statement, not necessary, unwarranted, uninformed, and just overall a very, very bad decision. And a public platform.
Very bad. But in contrast to that, you had the Prime Minister who mounted a political platform. I think the speakers on this, it was, I think in San Juan they had the meeting, the PNN meeting. You had the Prime Minister speaking last and speaking in descending order. Minister Hines, Minister Dolly, and of course I think Senator Sagram Singh would have hosted the meeting. I looked at it. I think the Prime Minister, listen, Trinidad and Tobago politics exist. You're going to have the to and fro of it, right? You're going to get rebuttals, as we expect to get rebuttals from the opposition leader and Mr. Griffith. You're going to expect rebuttals from the Prime Minister, and of course he would have put forward his rebuttals, dismissing the entire idea of the opposition crime talk, saying that the government and the opposition meet in the parliament. That's where we're supposed to be. That's where we're supposed to meet, and we want to have crime talk. And it's the same. They don't want to. We want to. That kind of thing. And listen, I want to say this. Good rebuttal. He did a rebuttal.
Yeah.
Right. Fair is fair. I expect to get that.
But that's all he did, Chris.
That's my point. There was some. I don't know if they didn't print the rest of the speech. Where was the? Because listen. Carnival, we are in this carnival season. It is a time for the artists in this country who suffered during the pandemic. Let us not forget that. The artists suffered and the culture suffered. We have the mask makers, we have the promoters, you have the all of the vendors, all these different fets. You could go on Island tickets and see all the different fets, different ones in different days. And I heard no discussion from the Prime Minister, none whatsoever, about how are you going to manage crime during this time. And you don't need no rocket scientist. You don't need no best Minister of National Security, big time former Commissioner of Police to tell us that crime escalates around Carnival time.
Well, all he did was tell former police John.A. Abraham, shut up.
Disrespectful,
Don't talk about my Commissioner of Police. And he went on to defend Earl,
and that's very disrespectful.
Who has been a failure thus far.
And the reality is, Mr. John.A. Abraham served this country very well. So very disrespectful. And in a time where we are honoring servant leaders, we have an interview coming up in paying tribute to some of our servant leaders. You don't treat people like that.
I was at a crime talk in Signature Hall last year, and Commissioner of Police Erla Christopher was present, and she, after that crime talk, she had said after 3 months she would have had a handle on crime. Give her 3 months. This was last year. If anything, crime has escalated to a point where it is completely out of control.
Yeah.
And
well, are you praying about it? Because that is what she said. You seem to not be praying.
I was at that crime talk, and I do think that statement got taken out of context by the media. By the way.
Tell us what. Okay, well, let's clarify.
It was a tiny piece of her contribution. Her contribution was very good, in fact.
Really?
And that tiny piece was splashed all over the newspapers the next day.
So you see, you all heard it here on Critical Conversations. Thank you for clarifying.
But I heard the commissioner last year reiterate, we need to pray. We need this divine intervention.
This is what the media.
But again, that was a tiny piece of her contribution. I have no idea how it got
so she's running with the media. You're running. But listen, again, good rebuttal from the Prime Minister, which we expect from the politicians. I mean, they're experienced politicians.
But one thing about the Prime Minister, the opposition had their crime talks and everything. Dr. Rowley come to rebut. But again, the speech was missing because I couldn't hear a plan, a policy, a solution, and look where we are with crime.
No, but at least for now.
You're studying to tell people to shut up and defend Allah. That is what you come on a platform to say?
Material time, using people time.
So Chris, you waste your time looking at that.
No, I don't. Well,
your material time.
Material time. No, I think, listen, for the Critical Conversations family, I think I spent my time, was valuable because now I'm able to share it with Trinidad and Tobago, right? So it's much valuable. But So
are you trying to say are you trying to tell Trinidad and Tobago when we know the Prime Minister is going to speak? You took one for the team, don't listen? It's wasting your time.
I took one for the team, right, guys? You're welcome. I took one. But back to this. I really think that that was a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
Especially now, and I know that we have a very short carnival period, So this is very, very short. We just finished Christmas. And of course, it's about a month. I think it's less than a month now from Carnival. A month from Carnival. Now, I saw also, you were telling me about the Constitutional Reform Committee. You said you read in the papers earlier. I believe it was yesterday you read in the papers.
So I saw that the PM has appointed an advisory committee to deal with constitutional reform, and it included former Speaker of the House, Barry Sinanan, Nizam Mohammed, and among other persons. And I saw the committee will be looking at engaging religious organizations, NGOs, and different diasporas within Trinidad and Tobago. And you know, when I heard those things, it sounded familiar, and I can't pick up on where I heard it, but I knew I heard someone speaking. This is what Mr. Basdeo Panday would have wanted.
Miss Panday, Miss Michaela Panday, who we would love to have on the show at some point to discuss not just her dance legacy, but of course the current affairs in Trinidad and Tobago. But I agree with you. I think in the interview there was discussions about her school, and she was like, no, thank you, but I think what he really would want for the country was constitutional reform. And I want to
which included these diasporas, the NGOs, religious bodies.
So this is I think this is a good thing. I think this is a good thing. I want to congratulate them on this. This is really good.
I hope something good comes out of it, and it isn't just about politics and poppy show in the place.
But why is it that we have to say that? Why is it that we happy? Because even with, you know, when we speak about oil and gas, we say drag and gas, and we talk about manatee, even the crimes talk with the opposition, and we're like, we happy, this is good intent, but then we need to always follow up with, but I hope it's not PR, I hope is why we have become so normalized now that if something looks good, we have to always but the contrast. I hope is not PR.
Is it that we are continuously disappointed by our politicians?
Perhaps. And that's sadder. That's sad for the Gen Z culture and the millennial culture, because who seems to occupy office at this time and disappoint us continuously?
Well, I guess that's
the Gen Zs, because they're lazy and on the phone, right? They're lazy. That's what she's saying.
At the end of the day, I think that everyone could have learned something from Mr. Panday. Duty to our country, put our country first, put our citizens first, put our people first. And if everyone could just get on the same page and do that, we would be way better off.
But I think the opposition crime talk, I welcome that. I think that's good.
Yeah.
Good. And it's good to see that, you know, despite the turmoil between Mr. Griffith and Mrs. Bisasa, for them to put that aside and say, let's sit down and let's talk about crime. Yeah. So that's good.
I hope to see them continuing these crime talks in different areas, and even, well, I'm sure Mr. Griffith and the opposition leader would be collaborating, and I hope next time they could just, you know, pick up the phone, call one another, and be on the same page. Remember, they are the government in waiting.
Okay.
And in order for people to take them seriously, to win, because I mean, 2025, the UNC is going to be a decade in opposition.
Right.
And Mrs. Bisasa cannot say one thing, and her accommodation person,
she partner in crime,
saying another thing.
Well, not crime talks.
Partner in crime talks. So how are you expecting the population to take you?
Right. No, that's a sufficient point. I think so. It's a learning opportunity. You know, it's a nuance. It's a renewed
I think we need to teach that generation. Hey, you need to be on your phone a little bit more.
Yeah. Dr. Roberts, we want to say about that, if you're listening, I hope you're listening, maybe if they want the phone a bit more,
they would have been on the same page.
You see, it's not the phone useful. But but as I said, I think that's not bad, that's good. I also think the committee put forward by the Prime Minister, I think that's really good, right? And I really hope to see something great come out of it. Because as we reflect, and I don't think this must be a 1 week we talk about it and a 1 week we mourn the passing of our Prime Minister. I don't think so. I think we need to continue not just revisiting, but continue speaking and boasting about his legacy, Mr. Panday. And on that note, stay with us, because in the next segment, we're going to be joined by Mr. Carlos John, where we will continue the legacy of Mr. Panday on Critical Conversations. Stay with us. Welcome back to Critical Conversations with the Compass Foundation. And as promised, we are joined by Mr. Carlos John, former Minister and former MP for St. Joseph. Mr. John, we want to welcome you to Critical Conversations and thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Now, Mr. John, you have had a very illustrious career in politics. I know that the marginal seat that is every political party's, in order for them to gain governance, they must win St. Joseph. That in Trinidad and Tobago politics, we know that that is how it is, right? And of course, you won the seat twice. What do you think are some key contributing factors to not just winning that seat, but your, again, as I said, your illustrious career in politics in Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, as I said before, it wasn't as illustrious as one would have wanted. It was 2 short terms because, you know, our administration at the time had its own internal difficulties. But it was enjoyable nevertheless.
No, you said it was 2 short terms, and we acknowledge that. But the winning aspect of it, I mean, when we look at the St. Joseph seat today, we're in 2024. We have a general election in less than a year, you can say, Shanta? Less than a year. And again, this particular seat is a hot seat. But you would have won it twice. How did you achieve that? What do you think it was that St. Joseph persons responded to you about?
Especially coming
when I contested, people had believed in the vision of then government led by Mr. Panday. Sources into it because it was a key seat in the corridor, and it would have been one of the jewels in our crown if we had won it.
Mr. John, I don't know if you mind repeating what you just said, because we sort of lost you for a little bit. So if you don't mind repeating what you said.
I've said that the party did value St. Joseph as a key seat in the corridor, a key marginal seat. In fact, some of us thought it was the jewel in the crown in the corridor. So we did put a lot of resources into it. Somehow I was convinced by Mr. Panday that I should consider contesting it, because he said that he and some others were of the view that I was a populist type of individual who would appeal to the electorate in that area. So that's how I really got involved in electoral politics.
Mr. John, you would have mentioned in a TV6 interview earlier this month that you owe your political career to the former Prime Minister, Basdeo Panday. You two remained friends for about a half a century before Mr. Panday's passing on New Year's Eve. What are some of your fondest memories of the legendary Mr. Panday that you call an enigma?
Well, first to begin, his wit, his absolute trust and confidence in me. He took me on board and under his wing. And really and truly, he gave me a lot of national responsibility. For preceding my appointment in joining the cabinet, I was the chairman of TIDCO. I was also the chairman of the National Carnival Commission and also on the board of BWIA. And I thought that the confidence that he reposed in me, I couldn't let him down.
Now, you know, we had former Minister, Mr. Sharma, last week on Critical Conversations. And he really spoke very highly of the late great Mr. Panday. One of the things that he said, or one of the main traits that stood out to me, or I guess us, would have been, he said that Mr. Panday understood duty to country and responsibility to office. And he really, absolutely, in my view, described him as a servant leader. I know that you would agree with this, but if you don't mind sharing a bit of those experiences, because I'm sure you had some with him, as you would have seen him as a servant leader behind the politics.
Oh, definitely. He was the type of guy who was passionate about the country and the underdog. And I remember him saying once to us that the real test of a democracy is not the contentment of the affluent, but it is measured by the poor and the access that they have to the basics: education, healthcare, food and shelter. So he came into office because of his background, always with the emphasis on uplifting the poor. And more than that, when he got in there, he demonstrated too a unifying spirit, not only among along ethnic lines, but it was business and labor and the classes. He was very strong on trying to give everyone a voice because he thought he or she should be heard. And I found that was an amazing characteristic of the man.
I know as Minister of Works, also one of the bigger projects under the Panday government, despite the scrutiny, I know that the Piarco International Airport was rated one of the best airports, I believe, in the region. There must have been some sort of catalyst that prompted this. I know, how is it that this Panday-led government, and of course you would have been Minister of Works, how were you all able to really conceptualize and visualize that this is something that not just would be needed for the country, but will take the country forward in terms of our air travels?
But first again, Mr. Panday was a strong believer in a new airport, functional airport, a commercial airport with more capacity. He thought that would be critical to the development of the country. But in fairness to those who were there at the time, I came in at the tail end. I joined the cabinet in 1999 because Sadiq Bash was the Minister of Works. He was focused on the airport, on its completion. And of course, we were getting a lot of public flack and there was a lot of anxiety about it. So I was invited to join the cabinet to be a senator in the Ministry of Works, with responsibility now for the other infrastructure. So I can't take any credit, really, for that super mega project, which is probably one of the largest the country has ever seen, and the airport is still standing today. For that aspect of the infrastructure work that was taking place at the time, I concentrated on more the road networks, which we found was in disrepair and needed some upgrading in the shortest possible time.
Mr. John, when we look at deliveries of proper road networks, even presently, especially more than two decades after this Panday-led administration, what can you tell us is lacking?
You see, I like to answer these questions in a very balanced and informed way. I'm not behind the scenes knowing like what the budgetary allocations are and how things are going and what is on the cards. I see driving around really. There's a lot of going on the Solomon Hochoy Highway. The highway to Point Forte is finished, and I'm seeing good reports in the newspapers. I was going to Miao Manzanilla recently, and I saw a lot of work going on there. So, I can tell you from sitting in the chair as Minister of Works, these things cost a lot of money, big bucks, and you have to spread it around. I remember going to the cabinet on many occasions and wanting to do many more things, there's so much you can do because you have to live within your means in terms of financial resources. So I am not too sure what is in the pipeline or what is going on now in any great detail for me to comment and make a comparison. We had concentrated at that time in my era on upgrading the basic infrastructure. The road network was dilapidated and in disrepair. And we said, let us arrest this problem, bring it up to some standards, and then we'll move from there. So that was the foundation I laid.
Can you share with us some notable achievements under the Basdeo Panday-led administration, together with your ministry as well, especially coming from a time where oil was $9 a barrel?
Yep. Well, in my ministry, as I said before, we embarked on a national road improvement program, national in scope, egalitarian type of project, not looking at any particular constituency or where we had votes or whether it's a marginal seat or not. We wanted it to be nationwide, and I think we accomplished that. In terms of Mr. Panday's vision, I think the airport was one. He was a stickler. He wanted this finished. He inspired us to get the job done, and he saw it through. One thing that stood out about him is he always had the courage of his convictions. And despite the fact that he had to face a lot of national, albeit flack and abuse, he was resolved to completing it and having something to show to the nation. Of course, we subsequently paid the price because there was a fallout, but he stuck to his guns. The other thing that he was very strong on was the recognition of the Baptists. He made Barbara Burke a senator. He wanted to have equal opportunities, and the Equal Opportunity Act was passed. And he was on a roll. He wanted the best for his country because he said that he had come from poverty and he didn't want to leave a nation in poverty after he demitted office.
Having been a longtime friend of Mr. Panday, you would have had some insight into some difficult moments. His career was a tumultuous one. He had highs and he also had lows. How did he cope with the low points throughout his career?
Sometimes he was down. He's a strong family man. He would be forlorn. He would go home and sit with his family and reminisce. And I'll give you two examples that come readily to mind. When three of our colleagues more or less crossed the floor, they were against him publicly, it pained him a lot. He thought, as the first Prime Minister of East Indian descent, the guys should have come together in caucus with him and have some private talks on the way forward, rather than going forward and bringing down his government, which was the first of its kind in Trinidad and Tobago. And he admitted to us, the other party in opposition at the time may have had difficulties, but they never hung their dirty linen in public. So he was really upset about that. The second thing that upset him a lot was that Christmas Eve when he was summoned by Mr. Robinson to come to the president's house. We had the 1818 tie, and he had called me before and asked if I could come over. So I went across to his home along with a few others, and we waited until he came back from Mr. Robinson's residence. And we saw him running briskly up the stairs, always very vibrant and, sometimes looking as though he's undisturbed. And he just blurted out, "Ray has given it to Manning." So some of us who were there were confused. I wasn't surprised. A number of the commentators who were present were asking, well, how could that be? We didn't lose the election. We got the popular vote. One attorney who was present said, but this senior counsel gave you an opinion which said that you couldn't be moved under the circumstances or shouldn't be moved. And then Mr. Panday also produced another opinion from a London QC, substantiating that or confirming that the opinion that he shouldn't be removed from office. So the others who were present asked him, well, what next? What are we going to do to block this? And he said, nothing. I will not oversee the destruction or division in my country. He says, you guys remember what happened years ago in British Guyana? He says, that will never happen here on my watch. I found that was very magnanimous of him. He took a very responsible line, because had he taken a line that was divisive, who knows what the outcome could have been. He was passionate about his country. He didn't want to see any bloodshed. He didn't want to end his political career as prime minister on that note. So he was prepared to work. So he just loosened his tie. I saw he mixed a scotch and water, sat back in his recliner, and decided to bond with his family. And I thought, what a human being. After all this stress, after all this pressure, after being pulled down from one of the highest offices in the land to just being now the leader of the opposition overnight, having not lost an election, in my view, he was just prepared to go with the flow and accept the decision of the president.
Mr. John, what is one message you think Mr. Panday would like to convey to his loyal UNC supporters?
Oh, those loyal UNC supporters, once he puts on that red beret and he goes before them in Felicity or anywhere in Central. Are you hearing me?
Yes. Yeah, and the orange t-shirt.
Yeah. Once he goes, yes, and that red beret and the orange t-shirt, and he goes before his loyal supporters, where there's a lot of adulation, he will say, no retreat, never surrender. Keep up the struggle and keep fighting for constitutional reform. That was his battle cry. He was an enigma. I don't think we're going to find one in our generation for a long time to come.
Now, Mr. Panday's contribution to our nation must not go unrecognized, and it mustn't go in vain. What do you think we can do to honor his legacy?
Well, one thing I tell you, what we shouldn't do, and I agree with what Michaela and the other family members have said, he was never a materialistic man. The house that he occupied for many years is the house that he left. And he had one piece of land that he left in Princestown, according to his brother Subhash. Never materialistic. So he wants no monument. But I think the recognition has already started. The Honorable Prime Minister just yesterday convened a committee to look at constitutional reform. That would be music to Mr. Panday's ears. And that, in my view, once that is accomplished, that's all he would have been interested in, as recognition for his work during his mortal life on this land.
Now, Mr. John, before you leave us, I mean, the present state of the political affairs in Trinidad and Tobago, from crime to social security to education to various issues that we face in the country. And of course, you will have come from a very successful Panday-led government. What are your thoughts on the current state of affairs in Trinidad and Tobago right now?
Well, obviously, it's unnerving. We are going through a very bad period with crime because the paradigm has shifted. From the time I was in cabinet and we had my Minister of National Security is Joe Theodore, things have changed. The criminals have upped the ante. And last night I was listening to the commentators, Mr. Dr. Rowley and others in the Quasi. And when you look at some of the points of view being advanced because of the techniques that are being used, it's a good time not to be in the cabinet and be responsible for some of those decisions, because damn if you do, damn if you don't. It's a really testing period for the country. And one of the things you have to understand, regardless of which side you're on politically, this is a national crisis, not a political crisis. And we have to find ways and means as a country to collaborate for what is in the best interest of ourselves, our country, our children and grandchildren.
Mr. John, we want to thank you for joining us on Critical Conversations with the Campus Foundation. Thank you so very much for joining us. We'll be back with more.
Sure, my pleasure.
Welcome back to Critical Conversations. And again, we want to thank you for joining us and continue viewing and commenting and liking and sharing all of our content. I know that if you are viewing us on the Sankia Net television right now, you can head over to our Facebook page at the Campus Foundation TT. Follow and like and interact with us. You know, send us a message. Tell us what you want to hear us discuss on Critical Conversations. We're not just on Facebook, of course. We're also on Instagram and TikTok. So please stay informed and stay posted with the Foundation's work. So for today, this has been Critical Conversations. Thank you for joining us.